Hello, America. You are listening to, you're all here. Thank you for all 330 million people, including those of you in prison and the dead, for coming to join us here on the DMZ America podcast. With zombies, we don't judge. Today is Friday, August 2nd, 2024, and I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
And coming to you from the right, I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis. So apparently there's some sort of election. It just got announced today. Now, Ted, correct me if I'm wrong. I just got a news blast that Kamala is the official has enough votes for the nomination. I thought she already had that. I mean,
she did, but so she had pledged. She had the pledged commitment from the delegates before. What has just happened today is that the Democrats began holding their virtual roll call, I believe, yesterday. So I guess they all got on their laptops and they're like, and the great state of Pennsylvania, home of the Moscow Mule, founded at a bar in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, casts its 19 delegates for Clovis. So yeah, they did that. I don't know if they did that in any kind of ceremonial way or if they just literally like, yeah, Pennsylvania 19 for Harris, done, next. I don't know what they did, but anyway,
yeah, are they showing it live? I have
that.
no. If they were, I would have watched it. So I'm assuming they didn't, but that doesn't
Well,
mean anything.
it's hard to believe that the Democratic Party would ever do anything in the shadows. That's
like
not
get rid of a
something.
sitting president and install a vice president who didn't run in a single primary, because that could have been embarrassing, Ted. Let's be honest.
Well, that wouldn't be very democratic now, would it?
No, having actual votes cast for somebody.
Nah.
Jesus, that's so 20th century, man. Come on.
Yeah, but if they did do something like that, they would choose someone who had a long track record of achievement and popularity. So therefore, it would just be a formality at that point, really.
So yeah, I listen. Okay, so President Trump is addressing the Association of Black Journalists in Chicago the other day.
Mhm.
This was a weird moment. First off, you watched the whole thing, and I watched a big
I
chunk of it.
watched it live while it was happening.
When he walked
Um,
out, and I think he expected adulation, like at his rallies. He stands there, is like, oh,
no, I don't think so at all. He wasn't
oh,
expecting that at all. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead. I mean, I do
no,
want
I'm
to.
saying when he walks out on a stage, he usually, when it's because 99% of the time it's at a rally, so they love him.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of came out that same way, had that same vibe. He comes and sits down, and then he gets asked a question about all the racist things he said, calls the black woman asking the question, calls her, oh gosh, what words did she use? Rude, uh, nasty woman. Says that a lot. And then goes on to question Kamala Harris's whether or not she embraced being black or embraced being Indian. And he says, as long as I've known Kamala, and Kamala, as long as I've known her, she's never, she's never said it until just recently, which is not true
Which
at
is not,
all.
it is not true. No.
And first off, the other part that was hilarious, like him knowing Kamala Harris, is like, what are you talking
You
about?
don't know her. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, why would he know her? There's no reason for him to know her. Yeah. So I mean, basically his assertion we don't need to do a deep dive into the assertion because it's dumb, was that she's always claimed to be Indian, but in fact now, and claiming to be black instead of Indian now is new. And what's going on? What's with that kind of? Look, she's biracial and she's
Yeah.
multi-ethnic would be the right word. And so therefore, she has a lot of different things to pull on she can draw upon. And there's nothing that's not cheating or anything, Donald. It's like
Well,
I have French and German ancestry. I can yank on both if I ever run for office, and I will.
but my question, I mean, so then of course Vance, who's a dipshit, comes, he'll say anything for anything about anything for just as if it helps, JD Vance. Um, jumps in and says, 24 hours and defends Trump, saying that's a totally legitimate thing to say, which was like, he doesn't qualify that statement at all, by the way.
Well,
He just says
he
that.
has to do that, right? He has to say that.
Well, you could just ignore it, but then there are other MAGA types who are now saying, "Yeah, what about it?" And it's just, I'm not. What's the There's a strategy here.
There's definitely a strategy here, and
Tell me what
I
it is,
know what,
Ted.
and I think I know what it is.
Okay,
Um,
hit me, babe.
I think it worked. First of all, he's, if this doesn't work, Trump will try something else, right? I mean, he throws shit at the wall and sees what sticks.
Yeah.
He finds what it is. He repeats that. Anything that doesn't get a laugh line, he immediately ditches. I mean, that's kind of his brilliance. I mean, as opposed to Hillary Clinton, who repeatedly kept saying the same unpopular shit over and over and over again and didn't seem to notice. What I think what's going on here is an old-fashioned attempt at otherizing her, because like what's going on is, this is a country that has always had white males, usually Protestant, as their presidents. So it's about pointing out like, well, this one's not like the usual. And it's trying to make her look different, exotic, weird. I think part of it is to try to split her from her black support. A lot of black people are very excited at the possibility that she might be elected. It's viewed as history making potentially, and so it's basically he's saying like, "Hey, Black America, she's not one of yours. She's not one of you. She's not a descendant of slaves. She's not. She's weird. She's different. They're both parties are calling each other weird these days. She's black asterisk, not real black. I think that's what this is about. I also think, and this is the bigger thing, I think this is a swift boat type attack. Her biggest appeal is the fact, the thing that she's got going for her, the reason she currently controls a $1 billion war chest right now, which is insane if you think about it, right?
Yeah,
and that's
well,
his biggest
yeah.
fucking problem, is that she's got much more money than he does all of a sudden in less than 2 weeks. But he's got to look, with the swift boat thing in 2004, Bush strategist Karl Rove identified John Kerry's Vietnam service as his biggest strength. And really, John Kerry had that all buttoned up. He had it all covered. Not only was he a war protester, and he testified famously at the Winter Soldier hearings when he came back, but he volunteered to go and fought with distinction and was highly decorated there. So he was a war hero and he was a pacifist. He had it all covered, right? All the bases in something that usually most baby boomers who came out of that conflict could not say. They had to choose one or the other. Maybe they had one or the other. Most people had neither. They like ran away and didn't go, or they were assholes like John McCain, who went because they liked to kill people. This is like kind of like John
That's
Kerry.
not fair, but please
John
go
Kerry
on.
was like, I'm rich and privileged and I don't want poor people to serve instead of me, so I'm going to go. Pretty cool. So Rove is like, we're going to hit him. We're going to get him right where it hurts. And so they did the ads that basically said that he was a coward and had not served with distinction. It was all lies, but it really worked. I think her biggest strength is the fact that she's a black woman. I mean, it's not her record. It's not her soaring oratory, which she has like done for day 12. She has still to speak extemporaneously, not using a teleprompter. She has still yet to give a single interview or press conference. She's just like Joe. Okay, but the point is that it's the fact that she's an attractive black woman who might become the first woman black president. That is, and so he's going after her right where she lives. This is about like, I'm going after her strength, and if her being a black woman is a big deal, I'm going to imply that she's not really a black woman.
Yeah, but coming from a gross, doughy white guy, does that have any legs with
Well,
black
if you were
community?
yeah, but he's not. But he already had been making inroads with black voters.
Nominal,
Biden,
but yeah.
he's trying to protect that and expand upon it. And if you were going to go after, think about it. If you're attacking Donald Trump, what is his biggest strength? His biggest strength up until recently was, I'm a successful business person. So a very powerful line of attack was, he's a failure. He's declared bankruptcy a bunch of times. He's not really as rich as he says, all that stuff. So I think that's what's going on there, Scott. What do you think?
Well, that makes perfect sense. I couldn't quite, that's what I thought, but I'm thinking that's insane. I mean, first of all,
It may be
her
insane. It may not work, in which case in a week, we may not see this again ever.
her entire, I mean, yeah, her, I mean, let's face it, the entire Democratic Party is woke, and it's all about, you know, race, and it's all about the, you know,
That's what this excitement is about.
gender.
It's only about that. I mean, let's face it, just think about 3 months ago, we were all talking about like, oh my God, what will happen if Joe drops out? Then they'll have Kamala and everyone hates her. That's where we were. So,
By the way, speaking of Joe, which we're not going to focus on too much, but did you see the video of him when he was welcoming the hostage back, the prisoners back from Russia? Oh my God.
I'm kind of wondering if we could like maybe give him to the Russians, you know?
He wouldn't know.
Well, and we wouldn't miss him. And like, they could just set him loose on the permafrost. Maybe we could get back like if they're keeping any like small animals hostage that belong to us, they could return in. It would be a fair exchange. Like, I'm thinking maybe like a guinea pig or something like that.
Yeah, it was so sad. I mean, he absolutely finally made the right decision, but oh my God, talk about out of it. I mean, this is like,
I got to tell you,
it was
the
sad.
more I think about this, though, my brain's been reeling. But okay, so this is pure speculation. But hell, what are podcasts for, right? It's
okay.
I think that I really do think they've had this planned for quite some time. I think they knew exactly what they were going to do. I'm not sure Biden knew what they were going to do. I think that I think there was within the Democratic Party, they had decided power brokers like Donna Brazil and people like that, and the Obamas, they had all decided that Joe had to go a long time ago, probably a year or more ago.
Yeah.
And then
I think a year into his term.
And then they were like, but we don't want to have a primary process. What we want to do is a bait and switch. We want to just swap them out at the convention or right before the convention like this. So the question is, who gets the nod? And then the thing is, how do we force the issue? How do we get Biden and his people to see reason? And I think they went to him and his people and basically said, your polls suck. He said, my polls don't suck. Like, okay, if your polls don't suck, then you got to do a debate to turn this thing around. You got to do an early debate. You got to challenge Trump to an early debate. Otherwise, we pull the rug out from under you. And this will be it. This will be, you're re-interviewing for your own job. Anybody who's had to do that at a corporation, like after a new boss comes in, it's like, you're interviewing for your own job. You should be able to do this, Joe, right? You've been doing this for 49 years. You can do a debate against the orange one. Oh yeah, I can do it. All right, let's see how that goes. Then it didn't go well, as everyone could have predicted, as you predicted, as I predicted. We knew what was gonna happen. They knew better than we did what was gonna happen, and it happened. And then they went to Joe, and they're like, "Now, okay, listen, you made a bet, you lost, pay up." And he dithered because he's Joe Biden and he's senile. But I think that's why you were able to see all 57 state chairs of the DNC come together within hours, and all the power brokers in the DNC, they had it all figured out. It was like Operation Valkyrie. It was a coup. They literally baited, and I really don't think that what we saw was spontaneous. I do not think that.
That's interesting. But also, it's also been, I'm usually not a conspiracy guy. You know that. I tend to poo-poo them until I'm proven wrong.
And you know that about me too.
Oh, you love conspiracies.
No, I do not.
What are you talking about?
Name one.
Oh. Okay. No, I wasn't prepared for this.
Nope. I believe the official narrative on 9/11, with one exception. I think the Shanksville flight was shot down, and there's good reason. There's good reason to believe that. The engine was found 12 miles away from the crash site, and they don't really bounce that far. And also, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, they say the number of minutes that the Air Force jet had been ordered to intercept, how long it would take to get there, and it crashed before. It crashed before that. After that time. So therefore, the plane did have enough time to intercept, and there's no indication that that the plane did not intercept in a timely manner. So I think that's the only thing I don't really believe. I don't believe the drink cart of death and all that shit. Todd Beamer. I mean, maybe that happened, but it's not what brought down the plane. I think a missile brought down the plane, and I think they didn't want to reveal it because even though it was the only thing the government did right the entire day, they didn't want to talk about it because everyone would be afraid of flying.
Well, they did shut down.
I wouldn't be afraid of
every
flying. I'd be
airplane.
like, if I'm on that plane and my plane's in that situation, you can shoot me down. I officially give the president of the United States permission to do.
Wow. Okay, President Harris, you heard that.
Yeah.
Remind me never to fly with Ted.
by Islamic maniacs. Yeah, you can shoot my plane down.
Yeah, remind me never to fly with Ted Rall. Just please remind me of this. Anyway,
conspiracy.
We're talking about the rise of Kamala Harris. I think the other thing is the powers that be, like Kamala Harris, the smoke-filled room Democrats, and they knew if they opened this up to a primary system, she wasn't going to be the nominee.
No, and it was going to create chaos, and it was also going to create something that they hate. They might not have total control of the situation.
Right,
Man,
which is weird.
That would be very unpleasant for them.
Because Democrats, you think of them as loosey-goosey, not wanting control, but they absolutely want, every political person wants control. That's the whole point of politics in many ways. So going forward,
Republicans aren't like that as much. Republicans have been traditionally, like, I always think of the example of the California special gubernatorial election to replace the recall of Gray Davis. And the party bosses did not want or like Schwarzenegger at all. But when it became clear that he was by far the most popular Republican running, they all the GOP in Sacramento got behind him. They were like, okay, he's the guy. He's the people have spoken. And same thing with Trump. The Poobahs, they didn't want Trump in 2015, but it was but he's the guy. So we go with him. But, in 2015, Bernie was the guy. In 2020, Bernie was the guy again. But the Democratic Party is like, yeah, no.
So look, going forward, Kamala Harris is going to announce next week. Here's where, control and let's not have any surprises really kicks into. She's meeting with the three leading candidates for vice president this weekend.
Shapiro,
whatever his name is, from Minnesota, and Mark Kelly from Arizona. Now, it's not going to be the governor of Minnesota. What the hell does that get you? I mean,
well, I'll tell you what it gets you. It gets you party unity. That's not a small thing. She needs to have that. She is. I'm looking. I have to know his. I just have to have his name. Tim Walz. Although he is also an incredibly intelligent dude.
Ted, here's why this makes.
Tim Walz is a progressive. So he brings you the progressive vote, which she needs after having cozied up with Israel this week, and also said that she does not favor single-payer health care this week. Now, so right now, progressives are drifting off like a polar bear on a melting ice floe.
Ted, none of this matters because they've already said the announcement's going to be Monday in Pennsylvania.
I know. And Shapiro just canceled a couple of things that he had scheduled.
He cleared his entire weekend.
Well, I mean, it's very hot up here. He might just want to be at the pool.
Yeah, just hanging out the executive mansion and Harrisburg, right? Is that the capital of Pennsylvania?
Harrisburg, yeah. He's those mansions are pretty old. There's probably the leaves have to be cleared out of the gutter.
Yeah, he's got stuff to do.
Snake out the pipes.
So it's going to be. So we're looking at, which I'm not. This seems like an odd choice to me, but a Harris Shapiro ticket.
It's not a good looking sign or political button.
It's not. It doesn't
roll off the tongue.
Doesn't roll trippingly off the tongue. No, not at all. Harris Shapiro. And like you said, if you're going to try to court the young pro-Palestinians, pro-Hamas protesters, which I don't understand, but that's another.
You mean the 0.01% of pro-Gaza protesters who are pro-Hamas? Okay, whatever.
Well, they're wearing the Palestinian cloth that
Yeah.
certainly shows unity with the people of not just Palestine, but
Yeah.
also
I have
the
one of those.
implication.
I'll wear it on the show, on the podcast next time.
Don't you dare. Don't you
It's
dare.
just an ethnic scarf.
That's come to symbolize Hamas in its, anyway, if
Well,
she's
it was
trying to
made
get that,
famous. It was made famous by Arafat, and he was
I
the
know.
opposite of Hamas. He was Fatah, and they were the enemies of Hamas. So
Right, but he's still a piece of shit. He was also the stories coming about him being a pedophile and everything else. He wasn't good people, Ted. Let me put it that way.
look, that is a different topic for a different day. All I'm saying is it's not a Hamas thing. That's all.
All right, but
It's a Palestinian thing.
if you asked them if they were pro Hamas, I would bet you 90% of those protesters would say yes.
No, oh my God, Scott, that's insane. I bet
is it?
I bet it would be under 1%.
Okay, well, next protest we go to, we'll have to ask.
Yeah.
Regardless,
we may see some in Chicago in a couple of weeks.
You definitely will. Oh, you definitely will. But I think Shapiro, I mean, that's certainly, obviously a Jewish name. Harris
and he's
has
very
pro-Israel.
I mean, people have been saying like, oh, it's anti-Semitic to say that he'd be a bad choice. Look, I think it's a coincidence. The fact that he's Jewish re-emphasizes the fact that he's so pro-Israel. But if he were, I don't know, something else ethnically Italian, and he was that pro-Israel, it would still be almost as big of a problem. And in terms of unifying the party, conversely, he could have the same exact name and be the same exact person. But if he was pro-Gaza, that would be, no problem for the progressives at all to get behind him.
So what is this? I mean, the idea that somehow the vice presidential choice from a battleground state gets you that battleground state, I think
is that true?
No, no.
I don't think it's really true. Yeah.
Did Hillary take Virginia?
No, I don't believe so.
So, so picking
Tim
Kaine.
He
didn't
should have picked
do that.
Bill. She should have picked Bill Keane. At least she would have
Bill
had
Keane from the Family Circus.
Family
Absolutely.
Circus vote. Very popular.
Who's responsible for the server? Not me. I don't know. Yeah, it's I don't know what, if this, geographically it gets you an East Coaster versus, and she's a West Coaster, I suppose. I don't know that you have to have that kind of balance in your ticket. I really don't.
It seems pretty fucking ham-fisted. I mean, I think if you want Pennsylvania, it's not like even a very popular and effective governor is not going to deliver that to you. Go and campaign in Pennsylvania and make yourself likable. And by the way, just be like super pro-union.
Yes. Yeah.
Do that. Spend
time.
I
couldn't. Yeah. Well, unless you're Hillary, which as we've mentioned several times, then just don't go there, because
don't go anywhere only go to places where you want to lose for some reason.
Isn't that weird? That was such a strange 2016 was so weird in so many ways. So she's going to pick Shapiro. She's announcing
it seems 95% sure unless,
which I thought was a mistake. I thought Mark Kelly would be an excellent choice, but that it would have been.
Isn't he a former prosecutor too, though?
No. He's a former astronaut.
But there was also some other dude who was
military. He's also military. He looks former military, as most astronauts were or are. He is very much more centrist in his views, and
yes,
I mean he's what you would expect from a Arizona Republican. He's not MAGA. He's not. I mean Democrat rather. He's not MAGA. He's not nuts. He's not. But he is. Fairly conservative. I think the progressives would not have liked him. I think Shapiro can probably speak progressive better than Mark Kelly.
No. It begins and ends with Israel. I mean, progressives.
Well, you say that. I don't think it's that.
Progressives are not going to want to hear anything in this cycle. Progressives, the earth might be on fire. It might be 100 degrees where we both are today, but they're not paying attention to climate change. They're not paying attention to abortion, barely. It's about Gaza. Gaza is the litmus test in this cycle. And I'm not sure Harris understands that.
I think she does, and I don't think it's a big issue to you. I don't think it's a big issue to a large number of Democratic voters. The
Well,
large number,
it's a big issue for a significant minority of progressive voters without whom she loses.
well, but they also don't vote, so I can understand
Well,
ignoring them or
they
not.
voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries,
They
and they
did.
and they voted for Joe Biden last time. So, I mean, Joe Biden really doesn't have a lot of major accomplishments to point to as a campaigner, but he really was afraid to burn the Bernie people. Don't forget, he brought Bernie in. He had Bernie campaign for him. He, he made nice with the squad. No, Biden kept the coalition together. And if Biden were not brain dead now, he would be giving that advice to Harris and say, you got to do what I did. You've got to figure out, you got to throw enough crumbs to the progressives to like make them feel happy. I don't think, I think she can get them without, she doesn't have to cut Israel loose. But, for example, something as simple as there will be no more offensive weapons sales until a permanent ceasefire is signed, but defensive weapons will be okay. We'll still continue
What does that?
cooperate. It's fuzzy, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything, but she could get away with that. That would probably be enough to convince enough weak-minded progressives to go along with her.
Well, it's sort of like we're not going to sell them any more 2,000-pound bombs except for the bombs we're selling them. It's
right. Like that.
What?
Like that.
Yeah.
But she would need to make like a public sort of, we're
But
done here. And also, or she could say, I'm giving Netanyahu a deadline. You have to be done fighting by December 31st. And then,
but I still don't understand. I mean, okay. I don't think it's as big an issue. The two big issues hitting, I think, Democratic voters is going to be abortion, and it's going to be the economy, which her commercials do not talk about other than, I want you to, you should only have one job to pay your bills. Okay. What does that, what in the real world, what does that look like?
Yeah, how do we get
I'm assuming that
with
means
the economic news that just broke today, that's a bigger issue, right?
which news?
Well,
100,
we were expecting 175,000 new jobs. Instead, it's 144. We were expecting unemployment to remain steady at 4.1. It ticked up to 4.3, and the Fed's not exactly coming to the rescue. So for the time being, I'm sure they will now next month, but the economy is definitely cooling off. No question about it. That's not
right.
good if you're basically effectively running for re-election, which she is.
Right. But here's the thing, Ted, real quick, and then I want to touch on some other issues. But in terms of the economy, the Federal Reserve Board this week, you talk about economic news. The bigger one was the Federal Reserve saying they're not going to raise rates until September.
Yep.
Now, you raise rates in September, the stock market's going to go, which is doing quite well now anyway, is going to go bananas.
Well, the market just tanked a little bit today.
Okay. But a little bit. But if you can say we're going to cut interest rates, even if it's just a quarter point, the market's going to go nuts.
That's true.
And all of a sudden, coming into November, the economy is going to be sink.
Everyone's 401ks are going to be looking good. The housing market's going to finally be loosening up.
Gas prices have gone down recently. It's looking good for the Harris campaign if they can get the economy chugging along. And those are the issues. If you can get inflation down,
I agree that the economy is, as always, the number one issue.
But you go out to eat.
I think abortion is not. I think here's the thing: people have very strong opinions about abortion, and overwhelmingly, the American people are pro-choice. 85% favor abortion rights to some extent, under certain conditions. But the question is, when you ask them, like, what's your biggest issue? Like, there are very few single issue voters for abortion. It's like number 14th on like,
I would imagine, but I'm going to guess, I'm going to float this idea and you tell me if I'm full of shit or not. I think in states like where I live in Alabama, Mississippi, I believe there's an undercurrent of really pissed off women and scared women.
Yes.
Don't forget in Texas, Texas is now having record numbers of infant deaths because these
And
women were
also, if you remember
forced.
when the Dobbs decision was passed, there were a lot of interviews from people down in your neck of the woods in the deep South who were saying, Republicans, deep red Christian conservatives, evangelicals, who said, I'm against abortion. I am pro-life 100%, but the idea that the government is making this decision makes me profoundly uncomfortable. That
And couple that with the laws that were passed were written by imbeciles.
right.
So they're incomprehensible to those who
And there's
actually
no
have to
exceptions.
practice medicine. Well, if you're an OBGYN in Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Texas, Florida, I mean, you can't practice. You don't know what's right and wrong because the bills are so badly written because they're
True.
written by, and I repeat myself, imbeciles. Um, so I think I believe there will be, although this doesn't matter because it's an electoral college system, not a popular vote. But I think you're going to see Kamala Harris do better in these states than you suspect. If that, but I mean, will it make a difference? No, but it's an issue down here because it's in Idaho and what is it, Wyoming? Um, that's where abortion will be kind of a subversive influence, but it's not going to change in terms of the electoral arithmetic at all. Um, so is this Trump strategy going to work? Well, you just said, do you think he gives it a couple days? If it doesn't work, he does something else.
Yeah, he has time. I
He
mean,
seems to be
he
off
has more.
balance.
He is off balance. He does not know how to run against her. I think he was really taken by surprise that there's this massive pop culture like on internet surge for her. The donations, probably, if I'm him, I'm scared to death of the donation surge. The money race is like
Yeah.
brutal. And it's just like, holy shit, she's like he understands showmanship. She's a popular figure all of a sudden. It has nothing to do with her, but she's,
No,
per
nothing,
se,
nothing to
nothing.
do with
But
her.
it doesn't matter because it's all true. And there's all this weird shit that nobody understands who's over 30, like Kamala Harris is brat. Brat summer. Like what is a brat? Nobody
Well,
knows.
I grew up. I don't forget. I went to junior high and high school in Wisconsin. So when I first saw that, she's a brat.
You mean like bratwurst?
I love brats. I
But
do. They're delicious.
well, I can't speak to whether that's true about her, but she is definitely a
Oh
brat
God.
according to people under 30. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So I mean, the point is, I think he doesn't know what to do. I will
And
say he seems to think that he's smarter than his advisors, and he's trusting his instincts more. They're basically going after they just basically want to do paint her as San Francisco liberal, dangerously
yeah,
liberal, too
I
liberal
think
for America. And I'm like,
that's what I would do.
I don't know, Scott. I think he's right. Donald Trump is a new kind of politician, even though he's 78 years old. And I don't think that these ads from like 1972, George McGovern, dangerously liberal, too liberal for America. I don't think it's enough to get you to 270 electoral votes. I mean, I
Mm,
think I think he's got to shiv her. Um, he could hope that she'll just trip and fall, but he's got to give her some help. And he's got to figure out where it is. I mean, is it something like these series of articles that are starting to come out about the massive turnover in her staff and how she's an
yeah.
extremely unpleasant person to work for? I mean, it could really hurt her if people start to think that she's a bad person or a mean person or an
Yeah.
unpleasant person.
This bubble, I mean, right now we're witnessing, I mean, it's insane, this Kamala worship. I mean, the Democrats making fun of MAGA America worshiping Trump. I mean, what are they doing but projecting things that ain't necessarily true onto Kamala Harris?
Yeah.
And that bubble does burst. And when it bursts, like any bubble, it's like boom. It's going to
Yeah.
happen fast. It's going to be, and it's how if her
What will it
campaign
be
people
about?
are smart, if her campaign people are smart, they're going to be ready for that. and how you manage it, because there have been times when this candidate was swept along. And that, Michael Dukakis is a good example. He was leading George H.W. Bush by a lot in '88.
Right.
And
The
all
tank
of a
photo
sudden,
did him in, right?
well, that didn't help. And George Bush in front of every flag factory in America helped a lot too. And the Willie Horton ads were,
Mm.
because Dukakis did not respond to those, which was dumb. It harkens back to what you mentioned about John Kerry. Not respond. He didn't respond. If you remember, it took him forever to respond to the Swift boat dipshits for truth.
Yeah, and that's what what's his name? Oh my
Roe.
God, the Democratic strategist for Bill Clinton in 1992, James Carville.
Yeah,
He decided he created a war room, and he was like, we will respond to every little thing as it comes up,
you
whether
have
it's a
to.
bimbo
You have
eruption
to.
like Jennifer Flowers, or if it's something else.
Right. So going after, the blackness, you may be right, but I don't know that that's, I mean, how do you find, I mean, you're talking about a woke party, a woman who has African roots,
Mhm.
and she ran on him. I mean, it was California.
I gotta
Of
say, if
course
I
she
were,
did.
I'm hesitant to say this because I feel like we have Trumpies who watch us, and I feel like I should be paid for this kind of advice. But if I were advising Trump, I think I would probably try to figure out some kind of wedge issue to fuck with her from the left. I mean, he
Yeah.
can do that, and he could do it on foreign policy, for example. He could say
Yes.
like, oh, we're
Yes.
pulling out of Ukraine when I become president.
Well, he said as much, and
He has. He could say
he
it
said as much
loudly.
about Gaza. He
And he
said
could
that he
even say,
wants
hey,
to.
hey, progressives, if you're tired of all these endless wars, come over to me. I'm putting an end to the Israel thing, like Gaza. It'll be beautiful. It'll be so great. Um, so he really could do that. I don't know if he will, but that might be an approach. I mean, her. I think he should try to drive the smart move for him
Yes.
would be to
Yes.
drive a wedge between her and the progressives.
Absolutely. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we got to talk about other stuff. Speaking
That's
of
true.
Gaza.
Yeah, it's true. All right, let's leave that there. Keep it right here. We will be right back. Hey, thanks for sticking with us. You're listening to the DMZ America podcast, the second of two beautiful segments for August 2nd, a Friday in the year of
The
our Lord
most beautiful segment.
2024, the prettiest, daintiest segments. If they were useless pieces of household stuff, they would be doilies. Anyway, thank you for. We figured we needed to talk about. We were just talking about how we've been remiss on talking about foreign policy, and
Yeah,
so indeed, there's a lot of news coming out of Israel and Ukraine, or I should say more accurately, the Middle East and the Russo-Ukrainian
yeah,
conflict. Let's talk about the Middle East first. In no particular order, Israel has been assassinating its enemies like they're going out of style. They whacked, most notably, the Hamas's chief peace negotiator at his safe house in Tehran, managing to piss off the Iranians because
wow. Oh, come on, like they weren't already pissed off.
but this is humiliating for the Iranians because they weren't able to
Good.
protect their guest. And Hamas, needless to say, is going to be like, well, we're probably not going to have any ceasefire talks anytime soon because you killed the guy that we sent to talk to you. So that's kind of like a problem for us. Hamas is, with all that going on. Israel also assassinated a dude in Beirut, and that's pissed off Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is things are heating up there. And there's Iran has said that they are going to retaliate, and it's not going to be wimpy the way it was with the fake drone attack a month or two ago. And Hamas is also Hezbollah has said that Israel will weep within the coming days, whatever that means.
Okay, they use that kind of language all the time. So
they do use that flowery. They're Arabs, so they use that kind of flowery language. But the point is, I mean, I got to say parenthetically, if you're in Gaza, maybe you're kind of like, what are we, chopped liver? Like, it's okay for us to get killed, but God forbid it should escalate into a regional conflict, because that would really suck if you started killing Lebanese and Iranian people and Syrians. Holy shit. I mean, as long as it's Gazans, it's okay. We were put on earth to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of insulting to them, but I mean, but that said, it is obviously, Iran can become a nuclear power whenever they want. And so that's kind of, it is worrisome. And Iran really, as things go, is a real country with a real air force, with real short and with, sorry, medium and long range missiles. It is, and towards that end, Lindsey Graham just proposed legislation in the Senate that would authorize the president to immediately respond with a military force against Iran if it's determined by the intelligence community that, which is never wrong about anything, that Iran has nuclear weapons or anything like that. Yeah. So, I mean, the point is things are hot, 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 as David Johansen once used to say.
Yes. No, it really has. These are very dangerous times. I mean, foreign policy all of a sudden is in the front burner again because, let's face it, P.J. O'Rourke wrote one of the best lines, and I'm going to paraphrase. I wish I could write like him, and speak like him, but I can't. But his line was, he was reviewing driving an LTD. Remember the land yachts? This car was bigger than most East Coast states.
Oh, I had one, so yeah, I know this car.
This thing was massive. He says driving around in it, and if you hit something, he said it's sort of like a civil war in Africa. You know what's happening, you just don't care. Gaza was, I think, in many ways, except on select college campuses, really did not affect or engage a lot of Americans. Ukraine doesn't engage a lot of Americans. We're kind of like, yeah, we're for the democracy, even though it hasn't had democratic institutions for what now, Ted? 5-6 years. But now, and I mean, I know you said it jokingly, but now this could escalate into a war involving Iran, who may or may not have nuclear capability. Israel definitely does have nuclear capability.
Absolutely.
Will this stay as a proxy war, as Hezbollah being Iran's useful idiots, in terms of, and they're also, let's remember, people, Hezbollah is also very well armed. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of drones. Was what spurred Israel's recent reaction. Now, we've had wars in southern Lebanon before. My guess is this is where this is going to go, but Iran seems to be more and more emboldened in terms of using its proxies to push conflicts harder and harder. Will Israel, I mean, this was a bomb in an apartment that killed the Hamas guy in Tehran. That's very different than a full-scale engagement where you're going to have Israeli bombs raining on Tehran.
Right.
And you tell me, you've traveled in that region, you have visited. I mean, I've visited places, doesn't make me an expert, doesn't necessarily make, but you've also studied academically Iran.
I've been to Iran twice, so.
Well, yeah, first time you kind of stumbled into it, didn't you? If I'm remembering the story correctly.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
And but I guess, Mike, but you do study the region more than most people. And so let me ask you this: if this grows, if this escalates to the point where Israel is literally attacking and bombing Tehran and other parts of Iran, has no choice, frankly, and they're a sovereign nation. They have no choice but to reciprocate and bomb parts of Israel, including Jerusalem,
Absolutely.
probably Tel Aviv and other parts. Where does that go? And where does it end?
Well, I think if that happens,
and you don't forget, in the United States, in the Hawks, especially in the United States, have wanted to bomb the shit of Iran ever since the hostage crisis in '79. So, we don't discount the boys and girls in the Pentagon who would love nothing more than sending a whole crap ton of drones into Iran and causing all sorts of carnage.
Well, it's like I mean, look, it's like a Jenga game. You know that if you pull one piece out at the wrong time, the whole thing is going to come crashing down. And it kind of doesn't really matter which piece hits the table first, but you know it's all coming down. That said, I think the piece that would, if there was a sizable missile or fighter jet attack, again, I would suspect a missile attack against is the Israeli portion of Jerusalem, or in other words, not East Jerusalem, or Tel Aviv, and we're talking about a mass casualty event, let's say hundreds or more of people. I would not be shocked if Israel were to respond with a nuclear attack against Tehran, and I guess they would probably say, well, that will put an end to it, and it probably would, but it would bring us to a whole new place. I could see the Israeli policymakers justifying that to themselves, saying, well, we prefer to do business with the Sunnis. This takes out the world's by far largest Shia country, and we never have to worry about them again. And all the Sunnis who hate the Shias and hate Iran are going to be happy, and they'll be secretly shaking our hands about it. So even though it is fucking totally insane, but they might say to themselves, look, the United States, you did this twice, nothing happened to them, they're fine. So
yeah, but this is a different can of worms, that this would be a very, very different situation.
Well, what would happen to the Israelis if they did that? Who's going to call them to account? Who's going to be pissed off? Who's going to do anything about it? I don't even know.
I think the world would be so aghast, so disgusted that they would be pariahs, and that Israel, that does enjoy,
well, that's true. I agree with that.
Diplomatic and, more importantly, financial alliances with Western Europe, even China and Russia.
No one could be seen having anything to do with them.
Yeah. No, they would be. And I think at that point, you've talked about this, what is the breaking point? The United States would be forced to say, okay, fuck you people. We can't countenance that. Not that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah. But I think that's to me the nightmare scenario. And I think it's telling that in a world where, less than 25 years after 9/11, where we've been obsessed over Islamic terrorism, and not limited to Al Qaeda, but we just saw the guilty plea by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed a couple of days ago.
I wanted to ask you about that,
but also ISIS and their depredations in places like Syria and Afghanistan. Americans forget it's ISIS who killed our Marines during the withdrawal from Afghanistan a couple of years ago. It's notable that it's Israel that seems to represent the biggest threat to global security in the world today.
Well, okay, I don't necessarily agree with you on that, Ted. I can't. I
think a nuclear attack against Tehran is not impossible, and it would come. And I don't think that Islamic terrorists have, or any other Muslim state, including Iran, has anything that big up their sleeve.
You're probably right on that, but I also don't think Israel's dumb enough to use what I have to imagine is a pretty small number of nuclear devices. If it gets to that point where they're losing, that's when they start to use it. And that's when things become dangerous. You just touched on the guilty plea. If we could switch gears real quickly, because I know you've been on top of this issue forever, ever since the invasion of Afghanistan. That's the Guantanamo and the prisoners we've held there. The guilty plea from the mastermind, which I'm not sure.
Alleged mastermind.
Well, he's admitted he's pleading guilty. So let's say,
but not in a real court.
No, so, well, kind of court.
It's a military tribunal, right? It's a kangaroo.
Right. Court. And he's been held for how long? And he was waterboarded how many times?
22 years. I think waterboarded 180 times.
Jesus. Yeah. And so
to put that into perspective, Christopher Hitchens, who was a neoconservative liberal, he supported waterboarding. And one time, just to sort of show that it was not that big a deal, he hired someone to waterboard him, someone with experience doing this. and there's a YouTube video, you can watch it. And of course, obviously, the guys weren't going to kill him. He hired them, okay, but he came out of it. He made them stop like instantaneously, like after 15 seconds. He just couldn't stand it, and he's dead now. He died of cancer, but like he had massive PTSD following that experience. Never got over it, and he completely changed his mind as a result of his experience.
So, okay, he's pleaded guilty, which means he won't get the death penalty, which, I mean, so what, I'm confused. Okay, so what is this? I mean, walk me through it.
I mean, like, why did he? Okay, so the motivation, John Kiriakou, my colleague at Sputnik, former CIA whistleblower, he said that basically the deal the government made was, those guys, they know they're never going to be allowed to leave. They were worried that they were going to be sent to a supermax when Guantanamo closed in like Colorado. And these are warm weather dudes. And they were like, we just want to like live in the Cuban sun the rest of our lives. So the only concession that they got besides keeping alive is that the Guantanamo now stays open in perpetuity for them. As long as they're alive, they have their own personal camp to the cost of many tens of millions of dollars a year of taxpayer dollars. And they get to live there where it's warm.
Your co-host made it. I was listening to that segment, and he made it sound like, oh, it's idyllic. It's so wonderful. They have it better there than they would ever have anywhere, unless they were in.
Well, bear in mind that visitors to Guantanamo do not get to see how the inmates live, but so we don't know that. I mean, presumably it's a lot less shitty than it was in the early days when it was primarily a torture and death camp. Now it really does seem to have settled into like a bleak routine, and that everybody's kind of used to, and they know what to do. It's still an atrocity. It's still a fucking abomination and an insult to any idea that America has any values whatsoever to share with anyone. It's completely hypocritical. It violates our Constitution 6 ways till Sunday. It's wrong. Look, I think the truth is, once the government decided to torture them, they decided that basically they weren't going to be able to put them on trial. Once they decided to do that, honestly, they should be released. And it's an atrocity, but that's not their fault. That's the fault of the government. The government could have tried them in federal court. There was a plan at one point to put them on trial right here in Manhattan. And they would have been executed. They would have been found guilty and executed. They probably did it. They almost certainly did it. So there's plenty of evidence. So the government decided that, it was more important for them to, follow this dumb ticking time bomb theory. And it is dumb because it was literally inspired by the Kiefer Sutherland show 24. Like, what if there's all sorts of plots, not just 9/11, that they're waiting to unleash against America? And you can see why they'd think that, because there wasn't just 9/11. People have forgotten about the attack on the Cole. And the East Africa embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998. So, they were like Al-Qaeda, who knows what they're up to. But the thing is that, like, of course, as soon as Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his comrades were arrested and taken into custody, well, any plans that they were involved in would have been scrapped, right? So there could be no ticking time bomb. By definition, there could be none. Their comrades had to assume that these guys talked under torture.
So remind me why they weren't brought to American courts. I mean, they fought. I mean, especially the Bush administration fought that tooth and tongue, and then after that, the Obama administration did too. They did not bring them to trial in an American court. Is that because of the torture?
They tortured them? Because under the law, they would all the testimony that they got from them resulted from torture, and you can't convict someone based on evidence that was extracted under torture. So that evidence is not considered reliable. So okay. There would have been so they had all this evidence, but they couldn't use it. So they would have walked. They would have not been convicted in a real court. So I think this is an atrocity for all concerned. the American people, most importantly, in my view, did not get to have a full-throated interrogation into what happened on 9/11 and how the planning took place, who was responsible. Imagine some of the things that might have come out at trial about the funding and the training.
I'm laughing because I know
you
the
know
United States was up to its eyebrows
and
in
Saudi Arabia and all that stuff. I mean, it
yeah.
would have been that we deserved to know. And I think it's not just the relatives of the 3,000 who were killed. Everybody deserves to know about that. Everybody who was affected by 9/11, and that's all Americans. And then the family members, some of whom are bloodthirsty and want to see them executed, they were denied that right. The family members who just wanted to know exactly what happened, who were not bloodthirsty, they were also denied their rights and to see a fair trial. And then finally, there was the detainees themselves, whose whether they killed anyone or not, had their constitutional rights trampled and shat upon 6 ways till Sunday. And so what this does is it basically tells the government, hey, no problem. You can torture someone. None of you is going to be held to account. None of you will be even fired from your job. None of you will even take a pay cut. You'll all be cool. Everything's fine. And 22 years, 23 years later, we'll get a life. We'll get them to plea out and plead guilty for life. Life. You got a life sentence out of these guys in a quasi-judicial verdict that resulted from torture. It's a win-win for the government. The government skates, man.
Good times. Good times. So do you want to wrap things up?
I guess so. Oh, well, we didn't really talk about Ukraine.
Ukraine is that's just ground into a slog. I mean, you talk about a quagmire. This is where we are, if it's my understanding. Russia's kind of moving forward, sort of, kind of, and Ukraine's not really. Remember the spring offensive? Remember that, Ted? The spring offensive that wasn't.
Springtime in Donbass.
Springtime on Donbass. Yeah, the time to go to the negotiating table is now. I think you and I are probably in agreement that, unfortunately, from my perspective, Putin is going to get most of what he wants. They're going to get an independent section. They're going to get a DMZ. They're going to get, because he loves this podcast.
Well, I mean, obviously.
And they're going to get, a guarantee from Ukraine that they will not join NATO.
Which is an easy guarantee for them to make, because under NATO's own rules, any country that has disputed borders is not qualified to join NATO. So
yeah, but they're going to fold them in. They're going to try. They've tried already. The EU already has brought them in, which is weird.
But the Russians have no objection to Ukraine joining the EU at all.
It's NATO. And so anyway, long story short, the time has come to negotiate. Otherwise, you're going to have an American in Afghanistan / Iraq situation where this is just going to last for a decade and a half, be exactly where you are today, only with a lot more dead people. And, time for the killing.
It's hard to say how long this is. I mean, it's kind of like, look, it is frustrating, because no matter what you think of this, we all know where this is ending. I mean, Russia's definitely keeping what it's already got. It's keeping the Donbass. It's keeping Crimea. And that'll be it. And so we know that. So you might as well just accept reality. And I got to say, okay, even if you're totally on Ukraine's side, and this is a bitter pill to swallow, but you have to look at it like this: if you're pro-Ukrainian, look, you fought a superior adversary for 2 years. You didn't lose the whole country. The only parts of the country you lost are the parts of the country that you couldn't govern anyway, because they are all full of ethnic Russians who hated you and never wanted to be in your country to begin with. So this is kind of like losing the part of your house where your evil ex-wife lives, and she just takes that, like she takes the mother-in-law suite, and you're like, well, I'm going to miss that part of the house, but I'm not going to miss the lady who lives there. And it's like, I'm not going to miss the Ukrainians should not miss the people who live in Crimea or Donetsk or Luhansk, because they don't want to be in Ukraine anyway. So this is a border that, even if you're Ukrainian and you think that this was a completely unprovoked active Russian aggression, this border actually does make a lot more sense than the 1991 border ever did, because
Yeah, I would.
that border, when the Soviet Union broke apart, left a lot of Russians on the wrong side of the border.
Yeah, I'm going to say Crimea. If you're Ukraine, that's a big loss. It's a financial engine. It's a huge financial engine.
That's true.
And to lose that, that's got to hurt. And that's the one. But they
They
have
still have
made.
Odessa, though.
Yeah.
And Odessa is very Russian.
Well, don't. Shh.
I mean, Odessa would be an issue at the negotiating table for the Russians.
Yeah, I think they're going to get pretty much what they want. I would say hands off Odessa.
I could see like a good solution being like to get back to our 20th century Central European history. Remember the free city of Danzig?
Yeah.
I could see something like that for Odessa, where Odessa goes into some kind of like gray zone where it's still in Ukraine, but like the Russian military has use of it. They can come and visit. They can come for like tarts and cakes, that kind
We're talking about the baked goods?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
not tartars. That's different.
Not tarts, but tarts. Okay.
Maybe maybe anything can be negotiated. Maybe.
Yeah, I would guess that Ukraine would say that's a non-starter, and I think they'd be right. They're going to have to give up an awful lot to get peace, and that may be a bridge too far. So, speaking of a bridge too far, Ted, where can we see your work?
You can.
I don't know.
That's a strange segue. Anyway, you can check out my radio show, The Final Countdown with Steve Gill, on Radio Sputnik, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern, also on Rumble. You can go to whowhatwhy.org for my cartoons, gocomics.com/Ted Rall for my editorial cartoons, and please purchase my most recent book, 2024 Revisited. Scott, where can we find all things Scott?
You can go to chicagotribune.com/opinion, see the work I draw for them. You can go to Dallas News and go to their opinion section, see the work I do for them, including a caption contest. You can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis to see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City to see my comic strip. And both Ted and I are involved in Center Clip, which is a app you can download, or you can visit it online. They've just updated and upgraded their website. It's effectively mini podcasts, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. And it's really cool because when something happens, when there's breaking news, it's kind of the best platform we have to put versus like saying something on X or Instagram, which will be buried with all the other stuff. It's a really cool tool and a really cool place to park our opinions. And there's a lot of other good voices there, very fast. It's a really interesting place. So I encourage you to go check it out. And like I said, then it has Ted and I. So there it is.
Indeed, very much. All right. So, Scott, as always, a pleasure. Everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Unless, something crazy happens and, I don't know, Kamala Harris turns out to be senile and drops out of the race. Anyway, you think it's going to be Shapiro, right? I think it'll be Shapiro too.
It's going to the announcement. They've already said the announcement's going to be in Pennsylvania. Shapiro has cleared his entire calendar for the weekend.
Could be a fake out.
Sure.
Cat memes, because of the JD Vance thing, have become a big thing. So I've noticed Clovis has been like hanging out by the door lately, and he's been meowing in like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, I don't know, just saying.
Okay, well, I think that actually reads better. Harris Clovis.
Harris Clovis is a better looking sign. And
it says it speaks better.
Yeah, true. All right.
Okay.
Anyway.
Bye.